Okay, in this part 2 of learning how to draw the human head, we will tackle the task of drawing from a photo reference. But before we do so, let us do a very simple comparison between the generic male and female features of the human head. You can see over here, this diagram, it contains some points. I will not go through them point by point. You can read it on your own. But if I can summarize, the main difference, in my opinion, between a male and a female head would be that the male head is, generally speaking, more angular as compared to the female head, which contains smoother curves. You can see this difference very obviously in a Bruce Timm drawing. He's famous for animating some of the very popular DC comic book heroes. Over here I have an image of his drawing of Batman and his drawing of Harley Quinn. You can see how he stylized the face to exaggerate the angularness of the male head to make Batman look more macho, more muscular, as compared to Harley Quinn, who has smoother, curvier features on the face. Generally speaking, when drawing portraits based on images, you will want to analyze the photo and select certain details to omit. What I mean by this is if you see any sort of imperfections on the skin, any wrinkles, typically you will not want to draw them unless you are specifically drawing an old person. If not, if the point of the drawing is to kind of have a more flattering view of that person, you want to omit such details. Especially for the female head, you want to be a little bit more delicate in your approach. Alright, let's start with a female portrait. As with the previous video, I would start the process by creating a grid. And as I mentioned in the previous video, the more subdivisions you have for your grid, the more accurate the final drawing will become. I start off by deconstructing the head. If you're still unclear of the process, you may refer to the previous video. As I'm drawing this, I try to make sure that the position of each feature of the face corresponds to that of the reference image, using the grid that I've constructed as a guideline. So over here, I think the on second viewing, I think the right eye is positioned a little bit too high up. If you compare to the grid, the right eye is slightly lower. So try to, when you're constructing these lines, try to keep it light, especially if you are drawing on the or using a traditional media like a pencil. Makes erasing it a little bit easier. In the previous video, I also briefly talked about how I simplify the hair shapes, and I think this would be a better example of how you can take a photo reference and try to simplify the hair from here. Okay, well, the main point of this particular exercise is to draw the human head. Tend to prefer to insert in the neck and maybe a little bit of shoulders, so it's not just a floating head. Okay, over here I am using line weight to emphasize certain features. When you are looking at another human being, usually you will look at the other person's eyes first. So getting the eyes to look right is one of the more crucial aspects of drawing a human being or drawing a portrait. I erased most of the construction lines for the nose, as I mentioned in the PowerPoint slide previously, that you will want to be a little bit more delicate with the drawing of the female face. You don't want to leave so much of those construction lines behind. Okay, over here, even though I mentioned that you shouldn't be doing any form of shading, you may darken the eyebrows just to draw a little bit more attention, and also just color the pupils to draw a little bit more attention to the subject's eyes. I guess I'm shifting back to the lip to edit it. I noticed that I drew the lips a little bit to be a little bit too large. As a rule of thumb, you want the lips to end roughly at the middle of the eye. So using that as a measurement and looking back at the reference, I tweaked the lip to be a little bit smaller. Right, moving back to the hair, like I mentioned, I'm grouping certain strands of hair into clumps. So I'm not drawing the individual strands of hair, but I am drawing the entire group. When drawing the face, try to treat each part of the face with equal amount of attention. I think a lot of beginners, they overemphasize on the eyes. They try to get the eyes to be perfect. You know, they spend a lot of time shading the eyes, but it is important to look at the whole thing, at the whole face as one object, if that makes sense. Like don't split it up into individual components to examine. On certain parts of the image where I can't really make out the details because it's too dark, I'm taking a little bit of a liberty with regards to the design of the hair. When drawing faces, it pays to take a short break after you think that you are done, and then come back to the drawing again with a fresh pair of eyes. You'll be surprised how many mistakes that you'll be able to find when you look at your drawing again. So I took a short break and I came back and I noticed that there were some issues with the nose and the lip. Okay, over here I'm doing a little bit of a cheat. With digital, it's easy to shift certain elements around. Unfortunately, if you are drawing with the traditional media, you will most likely have to erase and redraw the element. Okay, last but not least, I just want to end off the sketch by enhancing the line quality, introducing a variety of thick and thin lines so that my sketch looks more appealing. Okay, moving along to the male portrait. Similarly, I start with a grid. I personally find that I'm better at drawing male portraits. Not entirely sure why, but I think it's just experience. And maybe I just look at males more often in my life as compared to females. Or rather, I study based on the male head, so I have a little bit more experience. As I mentioned in the PowerPoint slide, when drawing the male head, try to introduce a little bit more angles. Try not to make everything too curvy, too smooth. An example will be over here for the nose. I try to make the edges a little bit more angular. For the hair, I'm also looking out for clumps to simplify.
That no other eyes reveal.
For this particular job sheet, try not to shade your drawing. You can draw in the shadow shapes like what I did over here, but avoid shading. You may insert some toning on the eyebrows and on the eye, on the pupil of the eye, and of course the nostrils. Okay, right now I'm about done with the drawing. I'm just going through the entire piece, making sure that the line weight is interesting. Alright, in closing, I just want to mention something that I did not do so in the previous video, that it is a good idea to do something like this, to analyze the deconstructed human head in various angles, various perspectives. It will help you tremendously when you are drawing the human figure, be it your own character design or you are doing an illustration for a client. I am also releasing another bonus video that kind of showcase some of my thought process. How do I do caricatures? So in my opinion, caricature is a kind of like a level up skill on top of being able to draw the human head. So if you are interested to know a little bit more on how to draw caricatures, then head over to that video. In that video, I will also be showing you how I paint my caricatures. At this stage, it might be a little bit more advanced. If not, I'll see you in the next video where we will actually move on to the full human figure. Get ready.